The night my own son threw me out of the house, the same house I helped him buy. He looked me in the eye and said, "Get the hell out of my house, old man," and right there in front of 100 strangers, he raised that $50 million check and laughed like he'd just buried me. But what he didn't know was that the winning ticket he bragged about wasn't even his. My name's Richard Miller, and this is the story of how a father lost everything, his home, his son, his pride, and still walked away with something no money can buy. If you're watching this, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're hearing my story from, because I want to know, when you hear how it ended, whose side you'll be on. He said, "Get the hell out of my house, old man," and the crowd cheered. That's how it started. No warning, no argument, just my own son standing on the marble steps of a mansion I helped him buy years ago, shouting those words into a golden microphone while hundreds of strangers filmed it on their phones. The music was shaking the walls, cameras flashing like gunfire, champagne spilling on the floor. Atlanta's night sky glowed through the tall glass windows, and in that light I saw something I'd never seen in my boy before: pure contempt. I was holding a plastic grocery bag, a loaf of bread, a bottle of milk, and a pack of Tylenol inside. My hands trembled not from fear but from disbelief. I thought I came to celebrate with him, to tell him how proud I was. He'd just won $50 million on the state lottery, or so the world thought. But standing there watching him laugh, watching that crowd holler, "Yeah, tell him, Jaden," I realized something I should have seen long ago. Money don't change people. It unmasks them. He raised the mic again. "You see this man," he said, pointing at me like I was a damn criminal. "This man's been dragging me down my whole life. Always broke, always complaining, always blaming the world. I built myself up in spite of him, and tonight I'm cutting that dead weight loose." The room erupted, applause, laughter, phones in the air. Someone yelled, "Preach, bro." I felt the blood drain from my face. I wanted to say something, but the words were caught somewhere between my chest and my pride. Jaden's wife, Camilla, stood beside him in a red silk dress, smiling that influencer smile that never reached her eyes. She looked at me the way people look at gum on their shoe. "It's time you learned boundaries." "Mr. Miller," she said, every syllable dripping sugar and poison. I took a step forward, my boots heavy on the marble floor. The room quieted a little, waiting for me to fight back, waiting for me to make a scene. I didn't. I just looked at my son, the same boy I used to carry on my shoulders through church doors, the same kid who used to fall asleep on my chest while I hummed Sam Cooke songs. "Jaden," I said softly, "you sure this is what you want to do?" He smirked. "Don't start that emotional guilt trip, old man. You're the reason I never made it sooner. You and your small dreams." He turned back to the camera crew. "This is my time now, my money, my life." That word, "my," echoed through the speakers like thunder. My heart clenched, but not from pain, from a strange kind of calm, because right then I knew something he didn't. I knew the truth. The DJ dropped the beat again, lights, swirling, people shouting his name. Jaden lifted a framed check, $50 million, and posed with it for a photo. He kissed his wife, raised his glass, and said into the mic, "To freedom. No more debts, no more leeches, no more dead weight." The crowd roared, and I, still holding that plastic bag, took a slow breath and stepped closer to the stage. The music faded just enough for my voice to cut through. "That ticket you're bragging about," I said, my voice steady as stone, "it ain't yours, son." For a heartbeat, the world stopped. You could hear ice clinking in the glasses. The DJ froze mid-scratch. A girl in the back gasped. Jaden blinked, his smile twitching. "What did you just say?" I walked up another step, close enough for him to see the truth in my eyes. "You heard me. That winning ticket, I bought it. With my card, my account, my name." He laughed, a short, nervous laugh that cracked in the middle. "Man, stop playing, I ain't playing." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folded paper. "Here's the transaction receipt from Georgia Lottery, time-stamped, signed. You remember me asking you not to touch it when you came by last week?" He froze. I could see the sweat on his temple. Camilla's smile vanished. her eyes darting between me and the cameras. I unfolded the paper slowly, the sound loud as thunder in that silence. You took a picture of it for your little followers. You thought no one would check who it was registered to. People began whispering. The lights felt harsher now, colder. Jaden's jaw clenched. You can't prove that. Oh, I can. Every digital ticket's linked to the buyer's ID. It's got my email, my phone number, my bank transaction. I turned toward the nearest camera lens and said calmly, "And tomorrow morning when the lottery office confirms the claim, they'll see my name, not his." The room broke into chaos. Phones went up again, people recording, shouting. Some were laughing, others whispering. "No way, man." Jaden stepped back, shaking his head like the floor had tilted under him. "You lying," he muttered. You trying to ruin me." I looked him dead in the eye. "No, son."
I'm reminding you who raised you.
Camilla grabbed his arm. "Jaden, do something." She hissed, her voice cracking, but he didn't move. His face had gone pale, his breathing shallow. He opened his mouth like he wanted to speak, but no words came out. The mic slipped from his hand, hitting the stage with a hollow thud. Then his knees buckled. His body fell forward straight into my arms before I even realized I'd moved. The crowd screamed. Someone yelled, "Call 911." Cameras flashed like lightning. I lowered him gently to the floor. For a moment, everything blurred: the smell of perfume and sweat, the sound of someone crying, the heavy thump of my own heartbeat. I looked down at my son, this man the world thought was powerful, and whispered, "It's not the money that breaks you, Jaden. It's forgetting where you came from." The paramedics pushed through the crowd, voices shouting light, flashing red and blue through the tall windows. As they carried him out on a stretcher, I stood there still holding that grocery bag, bread, crushed inside milk, leaking from the corner. People stared at me like they didn't know who the hell I was anymore. Maybe I didn't either. But I knew this much: that night wasn't about revenge, it was about dignity. And for the first time in years, I felt it standing there under those harsh lights with everyone watching, not as the broken father Jaden tried to bury, but as the man who refused to disappear. Because that ticket didn't just belong to me. It was me proof that sometimes life gives an old man one last shot at justice. And I took it. It was raining that afternoon, the kind of southern rain that comes down thick as syrup and makes the whole street smell like wet dirt and gasoline. I just finished my shift driving for a grocery delivery app. My back hurt, my knees were on fire, and I had just enough in my pocket for gas and a loaf of bread. I pulled into the Chevron off Cascade Road, same one I've been going to since my trucking days. I was about to swipe my card when the clerk, a kid named Malik with braids and a kind heart, said, "Hey, Mr. Miller, Powerball's up to 50 mil this week. You want to try your luck?" I laughed. "Son, the only thing I ever win is more bills." But something about the way he said it made me pause. 50 million, a number too big to even fit in my head. I looked out the window. The rain streaked the glass like tears. Maybe it was the loneliness, maybe it was the ache in my bones, but I heard myself say, "Give me one ticket." Quick pick. He tore the slip from the machine and the printer spat out a strip of numbers. I don't know why, but they looked familiar. 15, 23, 34, 42, Powerball 7. My granddaughter Layla's birthday is April 15th. The 23 was my late wife's birth date. 34 was the number on my old trucking license plate. I smiled. Guess life still got a sense of humor. Malik grinned. "You never know, Mr. Miller. Somebody's got to win." I folded that ticket, put it in my wallet between my Social Security card and a picture of Layla with her missing front teeth. $2 gone, but for the first time that week, I felt rich in hope, if nothing else. When I got home, the house felt colder than usual. The heater had been acting up, but I didn't have the money to fix it yet. I made coffee, turned on the old radio, and sat at the kitchen table staring at that ticket. I told myself it was just a dream, a small spark in a long gray week. I wasn't expecting anything. Just needed a reason to believe something good could still happen. A knock on the door snapped me out of it. Jaden, my boy. He didn't visit often unless he needed something. He stood there in his tailored coat, talking on his phone, Bluetooth flashing in his ear. Yeah, bro. Close the deal before Monday," he said before noticing me. "Hey, Pops, you look..." older. Time'll do that, I said, opening the door wider. Come on in. He walked in like a guest in a cheap motel, eyes scanning the room, careful not to touch anything. Still buying those lottery tickets, huh? He asked, noticing the slip on the table. Old habits die hard, I said. He chuckled, shaking his head. Man, you still chasing fairy tales. You know that's why people stay broke, right? Hoping instead of hustling. I smiled. You ever think maybe some of us already hustled enough? He didn't answer. Instead, he picked up the ticket, turning it over. Powerball, huh? $2. You might as well light it on fire. Here, let me check it for you later. I'll see if you hit anything. Don't worry about it, I said. I like keeping it close. It's good luck. But Jaden was already slipping it into his pocket. Relax, Pops. I'll bring it back. I'll even split the jackpot with you if it hits. Half of nothing's still nothing, I muttered, half smiling. He gave me a playful salute and left with his usual rush of cologne and noise, leaving the house quieter than before. That night I sat by the window, watching the rain turn to mist. I thought about my boy, how I raised him alone after his mama passed. How I used to drive 16-hour hauls just to keep the lights on. How proud I was when he started his own company. But lately, pride had turned into distance. Every success he gained seemed to push me further out of his life. I didn't blame him, not completely. Maybe I was a reminder of a life he wanted to forget. The next evening I was half asleep in my recliner, the TV still on. The news anchor's voice broke through my nap. Tonight's winning Powerball numbers are... I reached for the remote out of habit. 4, 15, 23, 34, 42, and Powerball 7. I sat up straight, my breath caught, my heart thudded once heavy. Those were my numbers, my numbers. I grabbed my phone, scrolled through messages, nothing from Jaden. I opened my wallet, but of course the ticket was gone. For a moment I just stared at the empty space where it used to be, my fingers shaking. I laughed quietly, not out of joy but disbelief. You've got to be kidding me. I thought about calling him right then, but I stopped myself. I could already hear his voice, slick, confident, dismissive. Relax, Pops. We'll handle it. So I sat there alone, the flicker of the TV painting my living room in blue light, the rain still tapping against the window like a slow clock. Somewhere out there, my son had the winning ticket in his pocket, and he didn't even know it yet. And maybe deep down I already knew how this story was going to end, because when life gives you something worth $50 million, it doesn't just test your luck. It tests your soul. The morning after the numbers dropped, Atlanta woke up to a brand new celebrity. And his name was my son. I saw it on the news before I even had my coffee. Jaden's face grinning wide, filling the TV screen. Standing on the steps of the Georgia Lottery building, cameras flashing all around him, microphones in his face. I bought the ticket right down the street, he said, smooth as a preacher, selling salvation. Didn't even think much of it. Guess I just got lucky. Lucky. That word hit me like a punch. He wasn't shaking. He wasn't nervous. He was performing. Camilla stood beside him, perfect hair, perfect smile, waving at the cameras like she'd been practicing all her life. I didn't even know they were married until I saw the ring. I turned up the volume. The reporter said Jaden Miller, a 32-year-old tech entrepreneur, is Atlanta's newest millionaire after claiming the $50 million Powerball prize. Claiming. My throat went dry. The camera cut to Jaden again. I plan to invest wisely, he said, voice slick and confident. Take care of my family, start some businesses, give back to the community. Take care of his family. He said that while his father was sitting alone in a cold house with an empty wallet and a flickering light bulb. I don't know how long I sat there watching. Maybe an hour, maybe more. Every channel showed his face. Social media exploded with hashtags. Jaden, the winner, had Atlanta luck from nothing. To millions, he was trending. My son was trending, and I was disappearing. Later that day, my neighbor, Miss Thelma, knocked on the door with a plate of cornbread and said, "Richard, you see your boy on TV. He done made it, honey. You must be proud." I smiled the best I could. "Yeah," I said softly, "proud." But pride felt heavy that day, like a stone I couldn't swallow or spit out. That night I sat in my recliner scrolling through Jaden's Instagram. Pictures of champagne fancy cars, velvet suits. Captions like, "From the struggle to the stars." He didn't mention me once. Camilla was already tagging brands, luxury watches, travel agencies, some energy drink deal. Every smile looked practiced, every gesture rehearsed. They had turned the biggest miracle of my life into a marketing campaign. Then right in the middle of all that glitter and noise, I noticed something that made my pulse spike. In one of the photos, Jaden holding up the winning ticket for the cameras, I saw the corner of the paper clear as day, a faint gray print, my name, Richard A. Miller. They had blurred it out for TV, but not enough. My eyes caught it. That was my ticket. Bought on my Georgia lottery account linked to my debit card. I grabbed my old laptop, the one that takes a full minute to wake up, and logged into my lottery app. I'd used it for years to play digital tickets because I hated keeping paper ones around. When the dashboard loaded, my hands went cold. Right there under recent transactions it said, "Purchase Powerball, $2 date, February 12th, status pending claim." I clicked details, and there it was. Ticket number, purchase time, my debit card, my ID, my account, everything. I stared at the screen, then at the TV where my son was shaking hands with reporters, the fake check behind him smiling like he'd discovered the cure for sadness. My phone buzzed a text from an unknown number, a picture of Jaden and Camilla raising their glasses. The message said, "You must be one proud dad, Mr. Miller." I didn't reply. I just shut the phone off and sat there in the half-dark, the hum of the fridge filling the silence. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got, not just at him, but at myself. Because I had given him everything. Every ounce of love, every extra hour behind the wheel, when I should have been sleeping, every sacrifice his mother and I made. I taught him to stand tall, to never lie, to fight for what's right. And there he was, lying on national television, selling his soul for applause. The next day, the calls started. Old friends, co-workers, people I hadn't heard from in 20 years. "Hey, Rich, your boy hit the jackpot, huh? When's the celebration?" I didn't correct them. I didn't say a word. But that night when I checked my email before bed, there it was, the message that changed everything. From Georgia Lottery Commission, subject winning ticket verification, pending confirmation. The email began, "Dear Mr. Richard A. Miller, our system has identified a Powerball ticket purchased under your registered account, matching the winning numbers drawn on February 12th. Please log into your profile to complete the claim verification process. Sincerely, Georgia Lottery Customer Services." For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. The glow of that screen lit up my small living room, and for the first time in years, I felt something rising inside me. Not anger, not greed, but justice. It wasn't about the $50 million anymore. It was about truth. About reminding my son and maybe myself that dignity don't come with commas and zeros. I closed the laptop, sat back in my chair, and whispered, "All right, Lord, if this is my test, I'm ready to take it." You don't raise a son expecting him to betray you. You raise him hoping he'll become the kind of man you never got the chance to be. After that email from the lottery, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jaden's face on that damn TV screen, smiling, waving, lying. The noise of his fame buzzed in my head like mosquitoes. You try to ignore it, but it just won't quit. So I sat by the window with a cup of black coffee gone cold and thought back to when things were simple. Before money, before cameras, before the world taught my son that worth came with commas. When his mama Evelyn passed away, Jaden was only 9. She was the soft in our home, the quiet voice that kept me from breaking. When cancer took her, it took my light too. I fell hard into whiskey, into silence, into anger. I remember the first night I came home drunk and Jaden stood at the door with that scared little look. "You okay, Dad?" he asked. His voice cracked like it did when he was learning to read. I couldn't answer. It took me a year to climb out of that hole. One day I woke up, looked in the mirror, and saw a man my boy didn't deserve. I poured the last bottle down the sink and went to work, any work I could find. Drove trucks, cleaned warehouses, loaded docks. 16 hours a day sometimes. My hands were cracked, my knees gone, but I told myself he'll never go hungry, not if I can help it. And for a long time, we were a team. We didn't have much, but we had each other. I remember him sitting at the kitchen table doing his homework while I fixed the leaky faucet. He'd say, "One day I'll buy you a big house, Dad, with a porch and a yard and a window for every sunrise." I used to smile at that. "Just remember me when you're rich," I'd say. He'd grin back. "You kidding? You're the first one moving in." That was the dream. A small one, but it was enough to keep me alive. But dreams rot when they're built on pride.
Years later, when Jaden's tech startup began to take off, I was so damn proud. I helped him with what little I had. I gave him my old truck for his deliveries, co-signed the lease on his first office. I even loaned him money from the life insurance payout after his mama passed. "Just till you are steady," I said. He promised to pay me back. He never did, but I didn't care, because a father doesn't keep receipts on love. Then Camilla came into the picture. The first time I met her, I knew she didn't see me, she saw through me. The kind of woman who measures worth by brand names and dinner reservations. Pretty smart, dangerous in that way. Ambition can be when it's wearing a dress. At their engagement party, she said something I'll never forget. I was standing by the buffet trying to make conversation, and she leaned over and said, "You raised him, poor Mr. Miller. Now let him live rich." I didn't say a word.
But I remember thinking, poor ain't about money, sweetheart. It's about soul. After that, things changed fast.
Jaden stopped calling unless he needed my signature on something. Said it was just a formality for his business credit. I didn't think twice. He'd always been good with paperwork. I trusted him. Maybe that was my mistake, trusting him like I still knew who he was. Weeks later, I got a letter from the county. Thought it was junk mail until I saw the seal, property tax adjustment notice. It said my home, the same one I'd paid off 15 years ago, was listed under a new mortgage. My name was still on it, but there was another one too. Jaden Miller, co-owner. At first I thought it was some kind of clerical error. I called the bank. After an hour of being transferred from one polite stranger to another, a woman finally said, "Mr. Miller, the property was refinanced 3 months ago under a joint application. You and your son both signed." I froze. "Excuse me." "Yes, sir," she said. "Loan amount $250,000. Collateral your home." I told her there must be a mistake. She offered to email me the documents. When they arrived, I opened the PDF, and there it was, my name, my address, my signature. Only problem was, it wasn't my handwriting. He'd forged it. I felt something in my chest snap, not loud, not sudden, but quiet, like the sound of paper tearing in two. I drove to his office that evening. The building was downtown, glass chrome, fancy logo on the wall. Jaden's secretary looked nervous when she saw me. "He's in a meeting," she said. "Good," I told her. "I'll wait." When he finally walked out wearing a tailored suit and that fake smile, he looked surprised. "Dad, what are you doing here? You tell me," I said, dropping the printed mortgage papers on his desk. "Why is my house under your company's name?" He glanced at them, smirked like it was no big deal. "Relax, Pops. It's just business. I needed collateral for a short-term loan. It's covered. Covered with my roof over my head," he sighed. "You don't understand how this world works, Dad. You want me to grow, right? You said you believed in me. I believed in your word," I said quietly. Didn't think I had to guard my pen from my own blood. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "You always overreact. It's temporary. I'll fix it." But his eyes didn't flinch. That's how I knew he wasn't sorry. He was annoyed I'd found out. I walked out of that office with the same feeling I had when Evelyn died, the sense that something sacred had ended and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. That night, I sat in my car outside his mansion watching the lights through the rain. People say betrayal feels like a stab in the back. They're wrong. It's quieter than that. It's a slow ache that starts somewhere deep, a place you didn't even know could hurt. And right there, looking at that house, the one he'd sworn he'd buy for me, not from me, I realized this wasn't about money anymore. It was about respect, about love turned into leverage, about a son who'd sold his soul one signature at a time. When you get to my age, you learn that the system ain't built for men like me, old, tired, honest to a fault. It's built for whoever can afford the bigger lie. After I found out about the forged mortgage, I spent 2 nights without closing my eyes. Every time I tried to rest, my mind kept circling the same question. How did my own son become a man who'd steal from me and still sleep sound? On the 3rd morning, I called a woman I'd heard about from my church buddy Deacon Harris, a lawyer named Portia Porter. She used to be a public defender, now ran a small legal office downtown, mostly helping seniors scammed by their own families. She's tough, the deacon had said, doesn't flinch in front of rich folks. So I went to see her. Her office was tucked between a bail bond store and a soul food joint that smelled like Sunday. She wasn't fancy, but she was fierce. Late 40s, smart eyes, dark curls, pin-tight suit, sharp enough to cut steel.
She looked at me across the desk and said, "Mr. Miller, why don't you start from the beginning?" So I did.
I told her everything. The forged mortgage, the stolen lottery ticket, the press conferences, the humiliation. She didn't interrupt once, just took notes, nodding slow. When I finished, she leaned back and folded her hands. "You've been through hell, Mr. Miller. But the good news, hell leaves a paper trail." That made me smile, first time in weeks. She had me log into my Georgia lottery account right there. She took screenshots, timestamp receipt, purchase confirmation. Then she asked for my bank records to match the transaction. "We'll also need video evidence," she said. "That Chevron you mentioned, they got cameras." I nodded. "Yeah, Malik works there. Good kid." She stood, grabbed her coat. "Let's go get it." We drove through steady drizzle, my old Ford rattling like it was praying. When we pulled up to the gas station, Malik was behind the counter, grinning. "Mr.
Miller, what brings you?
Oh wait, that's her, right. I seen her on TV. Portia smiled thinly. "I'm not famous, young man. I'm expensive. Now, do you still have last week's security footage?" He blinked. "I think so, yeah. Why?" She flashed her badge. Not a cop badge, but one of those serious lawyer IDs that make people straighten up. "We're verifying a lottery transaction. Need footage of this gentleman buying his ticket." Malik loaded the hard drive and found the moment. There I was, standing at the counter paying $2 in cash, smiling, tired but alive. Date, time, everything matched. Portia made a copy, thanked him, and turned to me. "This, Mr. Miller, is what we call proof with a pulse." By the end of that week, she'd compiled everything: digital receipts, video, even the email from the lottery confirming my pending claim. We were ready to file, but Jaden wasn't sitting still. 2 days later, a man in a gray suit knocked on my door and handed me a letter. "Notice of legal filing," it said. My son, my own flesh and blood, had filed a petition in Fulton County Court. He was requesting temporary guardianship over my assets, claiming I was showing signs of diminished mental capacity and could be manipulated. I remember reading that line 3 times, each word heavier than the last. Diminished mental capacity. That was his move, paint me as senile, confused, a broken old man who didn't know what he was talking about. The same man who taught him to read, who worked his bones raw to keep a roof over his head. When I told Portia, she slammed her pen on the desk so hard the cap flew off. "That boy's not playing checkers, Mr. Miller. He's playing chess with the devil." We filed a counterclaim the same day: fraud, forgery, and theft of property. The case escalated fast, too fast. Reporters caught wind of it thanks to Camilla's endless hunger for headlines. Suddenly, it wasn't just a legal dispute, it was a story. Millionaire son accused of stealing winning ticket from his own father. It was everywhere: TV, Twitter, radio. Some called me a liar, others called me a hero. I didn't care, I just wanted my name back. One evening, I sat in Portia's office while she scrolled through her laptop, her brow furrowed. "Well, looks like your son's got himself a high-powered defense attorney," she said. "Someone from Buckhead charges more per hour than you probably made in a week driving trucks." I smiled. Then we'll just have to beat him with truth. That's free. Portia chuckled. You remind me of my grandfather. He used to say, when a man's right, the mountain moves for him, but sometimes you still gotta push. That night, my phone buzzed with another text. A blocked number this time. You're making a mistake, Dad. Walk away before this gets ugly. No name, but I didn't need one. I just typed back, it's already ugly, son. You made sure of that. The next morning, Portia called me early. Her voice was calm but urgent. Richard, you might want to sit down. I did. They've approved a public hearing, she said. Full media access. Cameras, reporters, everything. This isn't staying quiet anymore. For a moment I said nothing, just stared out the window at the gray Atlanta skyline. Well, I said, finally, guess it's time the truth had its own microphone. I wasn't supposed to be there that night. I told myself I wouldn't go. Portia even warned me. Let the courts handle it, Mr. Miller. Don't walk into his circus. But pride's a funny thing. You spend your whole life swallowing it, and one day it claws its way back up your throat demanding to be heard. Jaden's mansion sat up on a hill in Buckhead, glowing like some cathedral of ego. Cars lined the driveway, Lamborghinis, Teslas, black Escalades with tinted windows. Cameras outside, reporters, a velvet rope like it was a damn movie premiere. I parked 2 blocks away and walked in the drizzle, my heart thumping steady, my old boots splashing in puddles. Inside, music blasted trap bass, shaking the chandeliers. The place reeked of perfume, liquor, and new money. The crowd parted when they saw me. I caught a few whispers. Is that his dad? He looks homeless. Damn, he really came. Camilla spotted me first, gliding over in a silver dress that shimmered under the strobe lights. Mr.
Miller, she said, that smile tight as a noose. What a surprise. You weren't on the guest list. I figured family didn't need invitations, I said, keeping my voice level. Her smile sharpened. You're not family tonight. This is a business celebration. Then it's about time I handled some business, I said, walking past her before she could stop me. Jaden was at the center of it all, up on a small stage with a mic in one hand and a giant check in the other. He looked like a preacher in a temple of greed, every camera flashing on cue. To all the dreamers out there, he shouted over the music. This he lifted the check is proof that hard work pays off. I made it. From the hood to the hills, baby. The crowd roared. Glasses clinked. Phones streamed live. His name trended again before he'd even finished the speech. I stood near the back, my old denim jacket damp from the rain, my fists in my pockets. For a second I saw the boy he used to be, the kid who used to draw pictures of houses for me and say, one day, Dad, you'll never have to work again. And now here he was, rich, shining, untouchable, and rotten to the core. He took a sip of champagne and raised the mic again. I built this from nothing. No investors, no handouts, no family backing me, just me. That was it, the line that snapped something inside me clean in two. I stepped forward. The floor seemed to stretch between us like a river, and every step I took, the noise died down a little. People turned, phones lifted. Jaden saw me halfway to the stage. His smile faltered. Dad, what are you doing here? I climbed the steps, slow, steady. My heart wasn't racing anymore, it was calm, like it finally knew its purpose. I took out my phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward the crowd. The bright light glowed with one line of text. Georgia lottery ticket owner, Richard A. Miller. Gasps rippled through the room. I raised my voice, not shouting, not angry, just solid, the way truth sounds when it's had enough of silence.
The ticket was bought on my account, my name, my card, my phone. The room went dead quiet. No music, no chatter, just the hum of 100 cameras recording. Camilla's face drained of color. She whispered something to Jaden, but he didn't hear her. His jaw tightened, his breath shallow. I held up the phone higher, swiping to the purchase receipt with my signature, my timestamp, my ID. This is what honesty looks like, I said. Everything you built on lies starts crumbling tonight. A murmur rose, nervous, electric. Some people backed away, others leaned in. One reporter shouted, Mr. Miller, are you saying your son stole the winning ticket? Jaden tried to laugh, but it came out broken. He's confused, he said quickly. He's old. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Dad, stop embarrassing yourself. I took one step closer. Don't hide behind my age, boy. I may be old, but I'm not blind. He opened his mouth, but no words came. I saw the sweat bead on his forehead, the twitch in his eye, the tiny tremor in his hand clutching that check. You want proof? I asked, swiping again. Here's the camera footage from the Chevron, me buying that ticket. Here's the email from the lottery with my name. You called it luck, son. I call it justice. The crowd gasped again. A woman in front whispered, "Oh my God, he's telling the truth." Jaden's face went pale. The microphone slipped from his hand, hitting the stage with a hollow thunk. He took a half step back, stumbled, then another, until his knees gave out. He collapsed right there, his body limp as the room erupted into chaos. Camilla screamed. Someone yelled, "Call 911." The music cut out completely. I didn't move, just looked down at him, not with anger, not even pity, just the tired kind of sadness you feel when a man finally falls into the hole he dug himself. Then I heard a voice behind me, firm, official, "Mr. Richard Miller." I turned. Two uniformed officers were pushing through the crowd. One of them, a young black cop with kind eyes, handed me a folded paper. "Sir, this is a summons from Fulton County. You're required to appear immediately for investigation into possible identity fraud." The words hit harder than I expected. Identity fraud. For a second, I didn't even know if I should laugh or cry. My son had stolen my name, and now the law wanted to know if it even belonged to me. I took the paper, nodded once, and said quietly, "Guess everyone wants their piece of the truth tonight." Then I looked back at Jaden lying there, cameras flashing all around him, and whispered so only he could hear, "You can fake a signature, boy, but you can't fake blood." And with that, I walked off the stage into the noise, into the lights, into whatever storm was waiting next. The courthouse in Fulton County smelled like old paper and colder truth. I'd been in a courtroom once before, years ago, for a parking ticket, but that day was different. That day, the air itself felt heavy, like it knew this wasn't about money or fame anymore. It was about my name. Reporters crowded the steps outside, flashing lights in my face, shouting questions. "Mr. Miller, is it true your son forged your signature? Do you plan to press charges? Are you the real lottery winner?" I didn't answer any of them. I just kept walking my cane, tapping the marble floor in slow rhythm. Portia was beside me, calm and precise in a navy blue suit, her expression sharp enough to cut through the noise. Inside the courtroom was packed media, neighbors, even strangers from church who wanted to see the old man who took on his millionaire son. Jaden sat at the defense table in a gray, tailored suit that looked more like armor than clothing. Camilla wasn't there. Guess fame has its expiration date. When the judge entered, everyone rose. Court is now in session, the state of Georgia versus Jaden Miller, regarding claim of ownership of the Georgia Powerball ticket. The clerk swore us in. I could feel Jaden's stare burning into me, but I didn't turn. I'd looked into his eyes 1,000 times before. I didn't need to see them again to know what they held: fear and pride fighting for space in a hollow chest. Portia stood first. "Your Honor," she said, her voice carrying across the room like it belonged there. "This case is not about greed. It's about truth, and the proof of it is digital, documented, and undeniable." She approached the screen in front of the jury, clicked play. Up came the security footage from the Chevron station, me in my work jacket buying the Powerball ticket with 2 crumpled bills and a weary smile. The timestamp read March 14th, 6:27 p.m. Then she pulled up the next exhibit, a screenshot from my Georgia Lottery app showing the purchase confirmation, the exact same date and time. My account, my credit card. The jurors leaned forward, some whispering to each other. Finally, she held up a printed email. "Exhibit C, Your Honor, official correspondence from the Georgia Lottery Commission." She read it aloud. "Dear Mr. Richard A. Miller, you have a winning ticket claim pending verification." That last line echoed through the room like a verdict before the verdict. When Portia sat down, I saw a glimmer in her eyes, half steel, half pride. Then Jaden's attorney stood, a polished man from Buckhead, with a voice slick as oil. "Your Honor, My client maintains that while the ticket may have been purchased through Mr. Miller's account, it was done so under a shared understanding that the winnings would belong to both parties. Do you have proof of that understanding? The judge asked, raising an eyebrow.
The lawyer hesitated.
Verbal agreement. Your Honor. Portia was on her feet before he could breathe again. Verbal agreement. The man forged his father's mortgage and filed a guardianship petition to seize control of his assets. If there's a verbal agreement, it was spoken only in his head. The judge looked unimpressed. Mr. Miller, he said, turning toward my son, do you have any document, any receipt, any evidence showing that you purchased or co-owned this ticket? Jaden shifted in his seat. His lawyer whispered something, but Jaden waved him off. No, Your Honor, he said finally. His voice cracked. But it was mine. He gave it to me. He always said I always said what I interrupted, leaning forward. That I'd give you everything. That's what fathers do, son. But that ticket, I pointed at the evidence, that was mine. You took it because you thought I was too old, too small, too easy to erase. Jaden's face twisted. You ruined me, he shouted, slamming his palm on the table. You embarrass me in front of everyone. The judge banged the gavel. Order. I didn't raise my voice. I just said the truth, slow and steady. No, son, you did that yourself. The words hung there, quiet but heavier than any punishment the court could deliver. The judge looked down at his notes, then back up. The evidence is clear. The Powerball ticket was purchased, registered, and verified under Mr. Richard A. Miller's name. Therefore, the court recognizes him as the sole legal owner of the $50 million prize. There was a hum in the room, soft gasps, murmurs, clicking cameras. Jaden stared straight ahead, pale and trembling, like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. The judge continued, furthermore, in light of the fraudulent actions regarding property documents and false statements of guardianship, Mr. Miller has the right to pursue criminal charges. Everyone looked at me, then Portia, the reporters, even Jaden, waiting for my answer. I stood up, my knees creaking, my heart steady. Your Honor, I said I've lost enough family to hate. I don't want his freedom. I just want my name, my peace, my dignity. Portia nodded silently. The judge tapped his pen, studying me for a long second, then said softly, That's your right, Mr. Miller. Jaden slumped in his chair, defeated. When the session ended, reporters swarmed again. Mr. Miller, what will you do with the money? One asked. I paused, smiled faintly. Try to live like I never had it. That's harder than you think. Outside, the sky was gray but calm. And for the first time in months, I could breathe without bitterness sitting on my chest. As we reached the courthouse steps, Portia looked at me and said, You could have buried him, you know, legally, financially. I shook my head. I don't need to bury him, Portia. The truth already did. They called me the betrayed father. That's what the headlines said. The man who beat his millionaire son. Every channel, every podcast, every late-night talk show wanted a piece of me. I became the kind of story America loves, a moral lesson wrapped in scandal. But I didn't love it back. The morning after the trial, my phone rang non-stop. CNN, NBC, local Atlanta stations. They all wanted interviews. Tell us how it feels to win, one producer said. I told her the truth, ma'am. I didn't win anything. I just stopped losing. So I turned down every offer. No book deals, no documentaries, no talk show couches. I didn't want the world to see me cry or turn my pain into clicks. Instead, I did something simple. I went home. The first thing I bought wasn't a mansion or a sports car. It was the little yellow house on Magnolia Avenue, the one Jaden had once mortgaged behind my back. It looked smaller now, like time had been chewing at its edges, but it was still standing, just like me. I paid for it in cash. No loans, no signatures, no tricks. The real estate agent asked if I wanted to put it in someone else's name. I said no, just mine. For once, that night I slept on an air mattress in the empty living room. Rain tapped the roof the same way it had the day I bought that $2 ticket. But this time it didn't sound like loneliness. It sounded like peace. Over the next weeks I kept my circle small. Portia, Deacon Harris, and the folks from church. Together we started something new, the Second Chance Foundation. It began with a single idea that came to me one sleepless night. What if I used my winnings to help parents like me, the ones forgotten, manipulated, discarded by their own children? We set up legal aid programs, counseling, emergency housing. I donated a large part of the 50 million. The rest I kept tucked away for a future that no longer scared me. Every morning I drove my old Ford to the foundation's office downtown, a modest building with peeling paint and a sign that said, "We help you stand again." And every time I walked through that door, I felt like I was finally earning my luck. Meanwhile, Jaden's world was collapsing. His company, once valued in the millions, folded within a month. Investors pulled out. His so-called friends ghosted him. And Camilla, the influencer wife who used to post pictures of her champagne breakfast, packed up her bags and left for Los Angeles with a new man and a sponsorship deal. The tabloids feasted on it. From tech king to tabloid tragedy. Camilla leaves Jaden Miller after lottery scandal. I didn't read them. I didn't need to. But one night, long after midnight, I heard a knock on my door. It was soft at first, then harder, 3 times. I knew that rhythm. No one else knocked like that. When I opened the door, Jaden stood there in the rain, soaked through, eyes glassy from liquor. The smell hit me before the words did, whiskey, sweat, and something else. Shame. Dad, his voice cracked. I got nowhere else to go. I stared at him for a long moment. The same son who once told me I was dead weight, the man who broadcast my humiliation to the world, now trembling on my doorstep like a boy again. His clothes were wrinkled, his beard, patchy eyes bloodshot. I almost didn't recognize him. I lost everything he said, voice breaking. The house, the company, Camila. She's gone. Everyone's gone. I can't sleep. I can't think. I keep seeing your face in that courtroom. Maybe that's not punishment, I said quietly. Maybe that's the beginning of your conscience waking up. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. Please, Dad, I'm not asking for money. I need a place to stay. I looked past him out into the dark. The rain was coming down steady, like the sky was trying to wash something clean. For a long moment, I said nothing. Part of me wanted to shut the door to remind him how it felt to be left outside. But another part, deeper and older, remembered the boy who used to curl up on my chest after his mother died. The one who said, "I'll take care of you someday, Dad." So I stepped aside. "You can come in," I said. He blinked in disbelief. "Really, yeah," I said. "But you're not just staying here. You're earning your place back." He nodded, tears mixing with the rain. "Whatever it takes." As he stepped inside, dripping water onto the floorboards, I caught a glimpse of the man. He could still be broken, but maybe not beyond repair. I closed the door behind him. Outside, thunder rolled, but inside the silence felt warm for the first time in years. And as I stood there watching my son lower his head in shame, I realized something I never had before. Money can rebuild houses. It can buy silence, even forgiveness, but it can't buy peace. It can't buy sleep. That you have to earn one truth at a time. East Point wasn't much to look at: cracked streets, rusted fences, warehouses that had seen better decades. But it was honest ground, the kind that makes you work for every breath of redemption you get. That's where I opened the Foundation's community workshop, a simple metal building that smelled of oil, sweat, and second chances. The sign above the door read, "Second Chance Garage." At first it was just a few tools, a coffee pot, and me. But soon a few neighborhood kids started showing up, curious about the old man fixing engines and talking about dignity like it was something you could rebuild too. Then came Jaden. He'd been sleeping on my couch for weeks, quiet, sober, and restless. The first few mornings he just sat at the table staring at his hands like they belonged to someone else. Then one day he asked if he could come with me to the shop. I didn't answer right away, just handed him my spare work jacket. "We start at 7, I said. He showed up early. Didn't say a word, just grabbed a broom and started sweeping the floor. Every now and then I'd catch him glancing at the oil stains that wouldn't come out, like he understood something about permanence now that some marks stay no matter how hard you scrub. Day by day he worked. wiping tools, cleaning filters, hauling boxes. His soft hands blistered. His back learned what honesty weighs. The neighborhood men, old veterans, ex-cons, retirees looked at him with suspicion at first. They knew his story. Everybody did. But after a while they stopped judging. Hard work has a way of silencing gossip. I didn't say much to him during those weeks. Didn't need to. I watched instead how he'd stop to help a kid with a bike chain, how he'd flinch when I handed him cash for lunch, like he didn't deserve it, how he stayed late after everyone left wiping down the counters, just to stay useful. One afternoon, the sun dipped low through the garage door, dust floating in the orange light, like memories that refused to settle. Jaden was tightening a bolt under an old Chevy engine grease smeared on his cheek. He paused, wiped his hands, and turned to me. "Dad," he said quietly, "can I ask you something?" I nodded, still working. "Go on. Why didn't you sue me?" I stopped. The wrench in my hand caught the light. For a long moment, the only sound was the ticking of the cooling metal. I looked at him, not as the man who betrayed me, but as the boy I used to carry home after football practice, all sweat and dreams. "Because prison can't teach what pain already did," I said. He looked down, jaw trembling. Then he nodded slow, like the truth had weight, and he finally understood how to carry it. From that day on, something changed. He started showing up not just to work, but to help. He brought donuts for the guys, fixed the busted coffee machine, really laughed for the first time since the trial. Then one evening after closing up shop, he came to me with a piece of paper in his hand. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice steady, almost hopeful. "You've got this place running smooth now. But what if we did more?" "More?" I asked. He unfolded the paper, a rough sketch of a small classroom next to the workshop. "A program," he said. "Free classes. For kids who don't have anywhere to go. Teach them how to fix engines, change oil, learn a trade. You said once that giving people dignity starts with giving them work." I stared at the drawing, shaky lines. Big dreams. It looked a lot like the ones he used to make as a kid when he'd plan our imaginary car shop together. He smiled faintly. "We could call it Second Chance Garage." I couldn't help it. I laughed. "That's a good name, son. Real good." He grinned back, a little shy, a little proud.
Maybe it's time I start fixing something other than engines. As he spoke, the sound of hammers and drills from the other bays filled the air, the sound of rebuilding, of men and boys trying to make peace with what they'd broken. For the first time in a long while, I looked at Jaden and saw not the failure, not the betrayal, but the possibility. And in that greasy, noisy workshop in East Point, surrounded by the hum of second chances, I realized something simple but sacred: redemption doesn't come with a check. It comes with work. And my son was finally ready to do both. The morning sun over East Point hit different that day, softer, cleaner, almost forgiving. It spilled through the open bay doors of the new workshop, painting the steel tools gold and the faces of the kids brighter than hope itself. The sign outside read, "Second Chance Garage," and beneath it in letters, Jaden carved himself with a shaky hand. It said, "Fixing cars, fixing lives." That was his idea, his words, his redemption. I sat on an old bench by the entrance, sipping coffee out of a chipped mug, watching it all unfold. The place buzzed with life, laughter engines rumbling, the smell of oil and fresh paint mixing in the air. Jaden was right in the middle of it, showing a boy how to take apart a carburetor without losing the screws. His tone was patient calm, a voice that used to carry nothing but pride and now carried humility instead. Every now and then he'd look over at me, just a glance, the kind of look that said more than words could ever reach.
Reporters had called again that morning, wanted to cover the opening film, the miracle father and son story. I told them no, this wasn't for cameras. This was for peace. A few of the neighborhood folks came by with casseroles and congratulations. One old lady patted my hand and said, "You must be proud." I smiled. "More than you know, ma'am, more than you know." When the last visitor left, it was just me, Jaden, and the kids cleaning up. The afternoon light slanted through the garage windows, catching the dust in the air like little sparks of memory. Jaden walked over, wiping his hands on a rag. "We made it," he said, looking around. "Didn't think I'd ever say that again." I chuckled. You didn't just make it, son, you built it. He looked down shy for the first time in years. Guess it's true what you always said, you can't fix your life until you get your hands dirty. I nodded. And the dirtier they get, the cleaner your soul becomes. He laughed a deep, real laugh.
The kind I hadn't heard since he was a boy. Inside my office, just a corner of the garage with a wooden desk and a window that looked out onto the street. There hung a single frame on the wall. Inside it was the faded receipt of that Powerball ticket, my name still clear, the ink slightly smudged with time. Beneath it in my handwriting, the words, "I wanted to outlast both of us. Money fades, dignity stays." That piece of paper wasn't a trophy. It was a reminder of pain, of justice, of grace. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and thought about everything it took to get here. The betrayals, the courtroom, the nights without sleep. But as the sounds of laughter filled the air, I realized something simple and final: I hadn't won the lottery. I'd won back my dignity. And that, to an old man like me, was worth every dollar in the world. The sun dipped lower, stretching the shadows long across the floor. Jaden walked toward me, his work shirt stained with grease, his eyes soft but alive again. He paused in front of the framed ticket, reading the words, then turned to me. "I'm proud of you, Dad," he said quietly. For a second I couldn't speak. I just looked at him, really looked at the man my boy had become, at the lessons carved deep into the lines on his face. Finally I smiled and said, "I've been waiting a long time to say the same thing, son." He nodded, eyes glistening, and the sound of kids laughing behind us filled the silence like a benediction. Outside, the Georgia sky burned orange and gold, the air heavy with the smell of gasoline and redemption. Jaden picked up a wrench, the kids gathered around him again, and the world for once felt exactly the way it was meant to.
You know, folks keep telling me I was lucky, but luck ain't what this was. Luck gives you money. Life gives you lessons. I lost a lot before I found myself again, my pride, my son, my peace. But standing here now watching him teach those kids, I finally understand something. You don't need to win millions to be rich. You just need to earn back your own name. Money fades, son. Dignity stays. And that's the only jackpot worth keeping.